Hello, today I'm going to show you how to use Lab Monster Toolkit to create recording and playback sequences in Rivals of Aether 2. I'm a big fan of Rivals of Aether, I'm a big fan of Rivals of Aether 2, big fan of Dan and just the whole Rivals team. But the training mode in Rivals 2 just isn't quite there yet. We know it's going to be worked on, we know it's going to be improved, but it isn't there yet. And I personally would like to be able to record and playback inputs for labbing defense. This is some software that I've written called Lab Monster Toolkit. It's available on itch.io for $5, and it creates 2 virtual gamepads and has recording and playback capabilities for tasks in fighting games. So TAS is tool-assisted superplay. The Marvel 3 community uses this software to create TAS combos. You can use this software with Rivals, although it is a little bit janky because it was not designed for platform fighters. It was mostly designed for 2D fighters. So the most important thing you need to do is make sure this digitized joys check is unchecked, because this makes it so that the joysticks are continuous values. If it's checked, the joysticks become just 1 and 0. The other thing, I've got a few hotkeys bound, which are going to make a few of the things I want to do a little easier. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. So there are now 3 joysticks effectively set up with the operating system of the computer now. The other important thing to know about the software is that it only works with X input controllers. So if your controller is not pretending to be an Xbox controller of some kind, the software will not work with it. If it's using not like a direct input controller, won't work. PlayStation controllers don't work. Just be aware of that. That's not a whole lot I can do about that right now. Okay, so we've got Rivals opened up. We're going to connect to Rivals by clicking this button and switching the X input version to 1.4, and then selecting Rivals 2, clicking Connect. These game speed settings don't work with Rivals. They work with a lot of other fighting games, but Rivals has their input system disconnected from their game simulation, which means that if the input system has lag or is hung, which is how this works, it forces a hang in the input system, it doesn't slow down the simulation of the game, which is good. That's a good thing that you should have. The games that don't have that are worse for it, but we can abuse those games. So you can see we've got 3 controllers here. For the sake of demonstration, I'm just going to put everything on Clarin, and I'm going to show you what this looks like with 3 controllers, and then I'll demonstrate actually setting up a recording. So right now, player 1 is the real controller, I believe, and the other 2 players are the virtual controllers. You can see that player 1 doesn't perfectly align with the virtual gamepads. The virtual gamepads are perfectly in sync, but the blue Clarin, when I dash dance and stuff, her inputs are slightly off. And there's a reason for that. Basically, the way the game is polling the inputs, the input that gets polled for player 1 is from the real controller and may not be the exact same input as the other controllers, but the other 2 controllers will always stay in sync and are always going to produce the same output, which means if you record something with one of those controllers, it will always play back correctly. But if you're going to be responding to a labbed sequence, you want to make sure that your controller is taking in, you want to make sure you're controlling the game with a real controller and not going through the mirrored controller, because you can see there's just a slight difference in what the mirrored controller is going to do, which you want to make sure that you're not learning how to play the game with that slight difference getting between you and the game's inputs. Okay, so that being said, let's go back over here. I'm going to turn off player 2, and actually I'm going to turn off player 2 here as well, just so that we're not getting that input. All right, so player 2 is, or actually, I screwed that. I want player 2 to be a dummy. I want player 1 to have the default tag. All right, so just like the player tag, when things are desynced like this, you want to go to player tag. You want to create a duplicate player tag, or just have it be. You're going to want to create a duplicate player tag. So select the duplicate player tag for player 1, and you'll notice for player 3, it can't have that selected. So then we're going to move the mouse and back out. Let me do that again. So move the mouse and then select the tag for player 1, and then press B and press A and select the player tag again for player 3. So that's how you can do that. Now I've got a duplicate of the tag selected, and I can do that and hit start. When you hit start, even though it's still taking input from player 1, it won't make player 1 be a playable character again. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to save the starting state so I can load it trivially. And then this controller, or sorry, this player 2 is being controlled by VPad 2. It's this input from this virtual gamepad is controlling this character. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press F2 to record, wave dash to ledge, do a special get up, and then hold shield. And then I'm going to press F3 to save it. And we're going to save it over get up special, which is the file I had created from earlier tests of this. And then we're going to load that sequence in, and we're going to switch this mode on the virtual gamepad to playback sequence. So now when let me, this is going to do a different thing because we didn't restart the training, but when I restart training, there we go. So it plays the sequence back. So now we're going to quit out, and I'm going to turn that off and be player 1. All right, so now I can press in on the joystick and try to lab punishes for this particular, for get up special. And I could do this for anything, right? It's a piece of tasks, it's a task toolkit software. So on top of, in this case, the thing that I'm interested in is figuring out what my best options are, or what my options are in general for, labbing punishes or parry timings or whatever. But you could use this for anything. You could use this to lab parry timings for Zeta burn pressure. You could use this for figuring out DI mix-ups. You could use this for whatever you want. It's task software. The sky is the limit. The only thing I will say is you are able to edit these input sequences. There's just JSON files, and there's a visual editor that lets you set the values you want. But because we're not digitizing the joys, it can't collapse the joystick inputs in the same way it could for a 2D fighting game, which means you have a lot of single frame inputs where the joysticks just are differing by very, very small amounts, which makes human editing of the sequences not super viable. The thing that you would generally want to do instead is just do the sequence and just keep on recording it until you get it right. And then once you get it right, save it, play it back, and lab against it. Hopefully people find this helpful. If you want to find Lab Monster Toolkit, the link is in the description. It's at labmonstertoolkit.com. Thank you so much for your time.